Right. Okay. I think we'll get started now, and people can just jump in if they're a little bit late. So yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening or morning, afternoon, whatever the time is, wherever you're from. I am very excited about this workshop today. So for those of you who haven't joined a Uprise Academy workshop before, just a quick little bit of context about us. So we exist to get the best of our generation, understanding what our purpose is and taking bold action towards it to create remarkable careers and lives worth telling stories about. So today we're very lucky to be joined by the lovely Sonia, who's going to be leading our workshop on goal setting today. Sonia is part of the Backed VC team, where she supports extraordinary founders on their company building journey post-investment. And will soon be qualifying as a coach as well to help founders navigate their decisions, bring clarity to their goals, and manage difficult conversations. And she was even featured on Forbes 30 Under 30 this year. So we're in very good company. Huge thank you for leading our workshop today. Just a couple of little housekeeping things before Sonia takes things away. If you have any questions at any point throughout the workshop, just feel free to pop them in the chat. And we'll get to them at some point, maybe at the end. Or if you want to unmute yourself and just shout, that's also fine. It'd be amazing if you want to have your cameras on so we can see your faces, but obviously if you want to keep them off, that's absolutely fine. There will be a few activities as well where you'll be put into breakout rooms, so it'll be a great opportunity to connect with other people on the workshop. Feel free to share your contact details so you can keep in touch if you make any great connections. Also make sure you have either pen and paper or notes on your phone or laptop so that you can make some notes for a few of the activities as well. And finally, I guess, yeah, we're all here for the kind of shared purpose of getting clarity on our goals. So just, you know, it's a safe space to share kind of as much or as little as you want to share. And I think on that note, I will stop talking and Sonia, over to you.
And I will try to share my screen. So I've tested this out a couple of times, but hopefully it'll work. Can you guys see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah.
Without speaker notes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting so many people to dial in, so it's great to have this conversation. On questions, I have left some time at the end for everyone to ask questions should you have any, but in the meantime, definitely feel free to post questions in the chat and we'll try pick them up as we go. So welcome to the workshop on goal setting and visualization. When I was putting together the slides, I've tried to make it into something that is relatively actionable as opposed to theoretical, so that hopefully all of you will have something to take away regardless of the expectations that you might be coming to the session with. I know that a lot of people might have different ideas around goal setting, and you might be at different stages in your lives, and you might have professional goals or personal goals. So to kick things off, we will do a little bit of intro to get to know each other and break some of the ice. I want everyone to have a think around what you're hoping to get out of the session and share that with each other alongside a really brief intro. Because there's so many of us, we'll have to do it in breakout rooms as opposed to all of us together. So I'll just get the next slide up in terms of the questions. So Katie will set up breakout rooms, and we'll, I think we've agreed to have about 6 people in a breakout room, and we'll give you 8 minutes to do a really brief introduction, what you're hoping to get out of the session, and what goals do you have in mind for this year. If anyone's not participated in breakout rooms so far, you'll have a little pop-up window come up on your screen. Make sure to click join, because otherwise I believe you'll be left in the main room with Katie and myself. Not that we aren't fun company.
Cool, I'll set up the breakout rooms now. Okay, you should all be getting a little pop-up now to join a breakout room.
And then we'll see you back here in 8 minutes.
Yeah, everyone should be back now. We've had Joy shared on the chat as well. I hope to have a different approach to my goals.
Okay, awesome. So The very first thing I'll tell you about goal setting is that you're probably thinking about goals in the wrong way. So I think deep down, most of us know what we want and what outcomes would make us happy. And in the session, I really am trying to equip you with the right kind of tools around habit formation to help you get to the goals that you've set for yourself. And the reason we'll focus on habits is because habit formation often makes achieving goals a lot easier. So the first reframing I want everyone to have is that you are very likely thinking about goals in the wrong way. When you think about goals, most people think about outcomes. So for instance, I want to lose weight, I want to quit smoking, I want to speak another language. And the reason this is flawed is because outcomes are a lagging metric of your habits. So because outcomes are a lagging metric of your habits, people often give up because change isn't actually noticeable quickly enough. And the most important realization you can have is that tiny changes can compound into very remarkable results. You have to be aware that transformation can be very, very slow. And because of this, I think motivation tends to fluctuate quite a bit. And I think most of us will have experienced the fluctuation in motivations. You start off quite motivated, and that over the course of your journey and habit formation tends to dip over time. And it is impossible to maintain consistent motivation. So tip number one is to not focus on your outcomes when you're thinking about goals. So forget about your goals and instead focus on your systems. So the goal is the result that you ultimately want, whereas a system is the process that will actually get you to that goal. And so when you think about the goals that you've set and trying to assess whether you might be on the right track or not, a good question to ask yourself in order to assess whether you're on the right track is, if you completely forget about your goals and focused on your systems, would you still succeed? The reason this is important is because goals, to some extent, achieve mostly momentary change, whereas systems are a lot more longer term. So goal setting a lot of the time is flawed in that once we hit our goal, it becomes a little bit unclear as to what happens next. And most people feel like they hit a goal, they need to set a new goal, because actually that change is quite momentary and it's very easy to slip back into old habits and not maintain that identity change that you might have been able to bring about. So on the other hand, systems persist a lot longer term, and it makes no sense to limit your satisfaction to one particular outcome when actually in most cases there's various paths to success. So when we focus on changing our systems, we're essentially trying to figure out what process will get us to where we want to be. And there are three layers to behavioral change: outcomes, processes, and identity. So most people will identify the outcomes that they want. They'll create the processes they believe will get them there, and then hope that through time, their new habits will alter their identity. What I think is very, very powerful is to actually flip that completely in 180. So I think the most powerful thing you can do is to reverse this and actually start with identity change as opposed to outcome change. So your identity will then inform your process, which will result in the outcomes that you might want. So to give an example that I think in most goal setting ones is probably the go-to one, but around, say, weight loss, in the first approach where people initially pick the outcome, then create a process to change their identity, you might say, I want to lose weight, and therefore I must go to the gym 3 times, and with time I will become someone who's fit and healthy. Whereas what's really, really powerful is to create that mindset change and shift around identity itself, and start believing that if you are an individual that is fit and healthy, that is why you go to the gym frequently, and therefore you're able to lose weight, or whatever your goals might be. And so flipping that order by 180, I think, is one of the most powerful tips and techniques. Katie, I will flag that I can't actually see the chat box. So if there is anything urgent, I'm happy for people to shout out, by the way, or I will get to those questions at the end, or Katie, you can monitor and ask them as well along the way.
Yeah, I'm monitoring. We do have a question, but it might be easier to save them for the end.
Okay, awesome. So in order to bring about identity change, there's two things that you can do that are quite powerful. So decide on the person that you want to be and prove it to yourself with small wins. And the small in front of wins is very important, because I think in order to create habits, even the tiniest changes will set us on the right path. And a lot of the time when we try to make changes that are too large, it becomes too daunting and it's too difficult to maintain that level of motivation. The real reason that habits matter is not because they can necessarily get you to the results that you want, although obviously they can do that as well, but because they can change your beliefs about yourself, which is what's so incredibly powerful about identity change. So I've put here the next exercise, which is actually an individual exercise as opposed to a group one, and it's called the habit scorecard. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the habit scorecard or may have done it in the past, but it's around creating awareness of your habits, because awareness is the start of behavior change and actually acknowledging what you do. So we'll give you guys about 5 minutes to note down the habits that you currently have in your day, and next to each habit, write down whether it's a positive, negative, or neutral habit that you currently possess. And the scoring system is very individual, so the marks will very much depend on the goals that you currently have in mind. So to give you an example, say my habit scorecard might begin with me waking up, neutral habit, going to have a coffee and a peanut butter bagel for breakfast. Coffee might be a neutral habit if I'm not trying to stop caffeine, and then the peanut butter bagel might either be a positive habit if I'm trying to bulk up, or a negative habit if I'm trying to lose weight. So your scoring system will be very, very individual. Does that make sense? Okay, hopefully everyone's got some pen and paper to note this down, but we'll give you guys about five minutes.
Yeah, I'll put a timer on for 5 minutes. If you finish before, feel free to just chill out for a few minutes, go to the loo, grab a drink, whatever you want to do. Okay, cool. That's time for that one, guys. By the way, if you don't have time to finish or need more time or anything like that, I am going to be sending out a recording of the whole workshop after the session as well, so you can always kind of go back to it in your own time.
And it's an exercise that I think is quite useful to redo every now and then. So say every 6 months, or when you feel that your habits have changed. Hopefully everyone's had a roughly or more or less enough time to capture some of your daily habits and to score them accordingly. So having covered the awareness step, let's talk about new habit formation, because I know that some people asked about how to get to goals, and I think habits are one of the most effective ways. So how do you actually form new habits? I think the best way to form new habits is to be specific about the what, where, and when. So one of the most powerful cues for habit formation is time and location. So you can say, I will X habit at time and location. And it's been proven that people that state the time and location of doing a specific habit or task tend to complete it a lot more frequently than people that just add it to their to-do list and don't specify the time and location. So say, I will do 5 sit-ups in the morning before breakfast in the living room, or I will read 1 educational article before bed once I'm already in bed, or whatever it might be. Another powerful technique is to build upon existing habits. So that's another powerful cue. So after current habit that you might already have, I will carry out my new habit. So I might say, after I come back from a run, I will stretch out my muscles so that I don't have sore muscles the next day. Or after my current habit of browsing social media, I will also read an educational article about a topic that I'm interested in. When we talk about habit formation, it's important to recognize the impact that the environment has on us. Motivation is significantly overrated because it fluctuates. And I think the people that are very successful in achieving their goals a lot of the time just put up with boredom or lack of motivation. So context will then become your cue around habit formation. And it is a lot easier to build new habits in new environments because you're not trying to fight old cues that might already exist. So say having a designated place to work, which is separate from where you normally have fun or watch television, might allow you to create the sort of habits that you want because you're shaping your physical environment and having that as a cue and trigger for reminding yourself to have that habit. Or placing your running shoes by your bed or by your door might be shaping your environment where it becomes a lot easier to develop a habit that you might want. If you're trying to break if you're trying to break a habit, it is a lot easier to avoid temptation than resist it. So again, shaping your environment in a way that will be conducive to breaking habits that you might want to break, a lot of the time is a really easy trick in order to get out of habits that you might want to stop. One of the things that I would probably lump under environment, which doesn't necessarily speak to the physical environment specifically, but is quite nicely tied to Uprise Academy in general, is networks. A lot of the time we don't think about networks as our environment, but networks in and of themselves are very powerful in shaping our habits. For most of the stuff that we do in life, our life is actually driven by network effects, and they have a ludicrously powerful impact on our habits. So some of the networks that we're part of, we don't control or haven't picked, such as the family that we're born into or the geography that we're born in. But as we get older and make our decisions around what we want to do with our lives and what we want to pursue, we make a lot more decisions around the networks that we want to join and we want to belong to. Where do I want to live? What do I want my professional network to be? Who do I want to marry if I want to marry anyone? Because that network will become my network as well. What communities and organizations do I want to plug myself into? And the reason this is really important for habit formation is that we often don't actually choose a lot of the habits that we have, but we imitate them. So especially we imitate the habits of the many, the close, and the powerful. So the people that are close to us, the most common habits that exist, or the people that we look up to who we might want to become one day as well. So one way to pick up habits is to join environments and communities driven by social norms of habits and behaviors that you actually want to possess. So join groups where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. And I think this is why organizations like Uprise Academy are very, very powerful in bringing about life changes because of the network effect. I don't actually work for Uprise Academy, but I'm a strong believer in the model and the setup. So those are some of the tips and tricks that I believe are really powerful around habit formation. So just as a recap summary before we do the final exercise, which is around visualization, and open up the floor to questions should you have any questions. So just a quick summary and recap of stuff that we've spoken about. Focus on designing your systems and don't focus too much on the outcomes. when designing your systems, start with beliefs around identity change. Become aware of your current habits to understand which ones serve you and which ones don't. To create new habits, be specific about time and location. It's a lot easier to create new habits in new environments. Think about habit stacking, so incorporating new habits alongside your existing habits, and influence your habits through the networks that you join. Hopefully anyone who's wanted to capture any of that has had enough time to do so. So before we move on to questions, because I much more enjoy dialogues and having conversations to make sure that we can cover things that might be helpful, I want us to do a powerful visualization exercise. So everyone, please project yourself forward by 12 months. So it's 1st of July 2021. And individually, you won't have to share this unless you'd like to. And obviously, I'm always really interested to hear what people would like to achieve. But complete this sentence for yourself. So my name is Sonia. It is July 2021, and I've had an amazing year, and here are the reasons why. We'll give all of you 2 minutes, or maybe a little bit more if we've got some buffer time as well.
Yeah, we'll do 2 minutes. I think we can do, it's quite a big question to answer in 2 minutes, actually.
We'll give everyone 5 minutes.
So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but at least, you know, you'll have a starting point anyway, which you can work from. So yeah, I'll put 2 minutes on the clock. Okay, cool. Time's up.
So I had a quick look through the cameras, and it was so nice to see people actively participating. This visualization exercise is quite personal, so I don't know if anyone would feel comfortable or open to sharing, but if anyone would like to, you're more than welcome to.
It's not exactly.
Can I go?
Oops.
Can I go? I'm Kiran here.
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, I'm Kiran. It is July 2020. I had an amazing year. Here are the reasons. I bought my own apartments, 3 BHK. I bought my BMW car. I have achieved my sales quota, 3 million from my region of territory. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing.
If anyone else wants to share, you can pop it in the chat as well.
In the chat. And I'm more than happy to take questions. I've been able to open up the chat window, so I'm happy to start from the bottom. So Aline has asked whether there's any sort of advice or recommendation around whether you want to share your goals and new habits with friends or family. I think this is, as with most things in life, very dependent on how supportive you believe that they would be. But assuming that they would be supportive, I think it's good to share habits and goals that you've set for yourself. A lot of the time it has this mental trick as well, where once you've openly committed to something, I think it helps a lot of people stick to their habits and achieving their goals, because all of a sudden it's out in the open that you said you'd to do something, so you now have to go and do it. I also want to take another question on there was a question a little bit earlier on planning for the second half of the year, given the uncertainty of our times. I think a very good question. I don't know the timestamp of the question, and whether when you think about it through identity change, whether that changes your mindset around this question at all. I don't know if the question still stands or not. I'm more than happy to take it if so.
Yeah, I made this question, and actually one thing that I liked about this statement in 1 year time or 6 months, as it was my original question, is that you are obliged to think backwards. So it's not from here to there, it's there from here. So you have to actually think about, okay, I have this amount of time and I would like to achieve this, and how much I can do or how much I am committed to improve myself or to improve what I have at hand now to do that. So I think with this statement for, like, say 1 year or 6 months time, as it was the question, I think it's kind of answered now. Thank you. Thank you.
I think also to draw on the fact that we spoke about systems really early on, I think if you think about your process more structured around systems as opposed to specific outcomes, I think it is still worth planning and designing the systems that you believe will get you to where you want to be. So to get you to July 2021, so that that statement is true.
We've had another couple of questions on the chat as well. So Chitra has asked for any tips on visualization. How do we create the visuals in our mind?
Yeah, so tips around visualization, try to recreate in your head all of your sensory inputs. So sometimes it becomes a lot easier for people when you have to physically imagine where you are. So not only where you're living, but where are you sitting when you're saying the statement and the statement is true. What can you hear? What can you smell? What can you see? What can you feel? Is anyone else in the room with you? So try to incorporate all of your sensory inputs into your visualization, and sometimes that might make it a little bit easier to picture that statement being true. Does that help? I'll take the silence as either a yes or no.
There's one more question as well. How do you reprogram the narrative you tell yourself that says it's too much of a radical shift, or what if I'm not committed to this goal, leading you to lack of the belief in yourself? Is the best way to grow confidence in yourself by seeing progress?
I think in terms of reprogramming your narrative, so I'll go back to the slide around the 2 things to do around identity change. So 1, identify the person that you want to become and prove it to yourself through small wins. And I really want to emphasize the small wins, because I think if you do prove it to yourself with the tiniest actions, you can't really derail yourself. So say if I have a goal around increasing the amount of time that I read, so the person that I want to become is an avid reader. If I set myself a goal or a challenge of reading 2 books a week, it's probably quite unlikely that I'll make that into a habit and that I'll be able to sustain it. And then all of a sudden I'll realize that actually I'm not an avid reader. So why am I telling myself that I am? But if I set myself a goal of reading 1 page a night, like just 1 page, or even like 1 paragraph, over time, I can genuinely prove it to myself that it's doable. And that 1 paragraph can become 2 paragraphs, can become a page, can become a chapter, until you have those habits that reinforce the type of behavior that you want to exhibit. So focus on the tiniest actions that you can actually do to prove to yourself that you're making some sort of progress.
We had another one.
Where are you going?
We had another. How do you cope with difficult moments that may hinder positive behaviours? So it's probably a lot of us have been slightly railroaded by what's happened kind of recently. So yeah, how do you cope with the difficult times that get in the way of you making progress?
Ava, can you unpick that a little bit, just so I can try answer it as best I can? And I guess I'm mostly thinking of like the locus of control. Is it difficult moments where you fail to do something, or is it a difficult moment because something external happens? Okay, so distress and low mood. I am not a psychologist or therapist, so caveating that I am in no way professionally qualified to necessarily give advice around low moods or distress. For example, if you're on a diet, okay, the last one I think is a relatively straightforward response in terms of environment design. So it's a lot easier to avoid temptation than resist it. So can you create those systems where you don't have to resist cravings? You can just eliminate anything that might derail your progress. In terms of stress and low mood, I think coming to a realization that life is both skill and luck. And I think the more comfortable all of us can come with uncertainty in general, and not focus on the outcomes, but focus on the process, I think can create some of that distress. And I know that it's not necessarily an easy mindset shift to do or have, but I think if you have the right skills and process in the long term, you will weather most things in life. But life is unpredictable, and there is always an element of luck and an element of things that we can't possibly plan for. So Hassan, you asked whether you would focus on the environment or systems that would help you become a more productive. Yes, I believe that is one of the easiest things that people can implement on a day-to-day basis. On the, just Ava, just to wrap it, and I guess for everyone else on the skill and luck, I've got this new, the start of a new obsession for me, or something that I'm really, really keen to explore, one of my own personal goals. And that's around poker. I myself don't currently play poker, and I'm hoping to get good at poker. But I think one of the things that poker teaches you about life is that you can, if you have the right process long term, you can hone that skill and become very, very good. But there is no such thing as certainty ever about anything. So how can you get to the stage where you have as much information as you possibly can to make the best decision in that moment, but never beat yourself up about the outcomes, provided that your decision-making process was the right one? If you're not focused on the goal, how does one achieve? We need some focus to achieve something. Chitra, so I would still frame it as having a goal, but not being too focused on the specific outcome, but rather the system and the process that will get you there. So I think when you, I imagine for most of you, when you filled out the sentence as to where you see yourself next year, you will have had things that would, in tangible or emotional ways, indicate it to you whether you've managed to project yourself into a slightly different state or made some sort of progress. And I think the journey around systems should help you reframe that it's not a make or break, provided there's some sort of progress. Hopefully you'll get close to where you want to be.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Okay.
Information on systems. Can you give an example of designing a system?
Designing a system. I can try with a specific goal as well. Do you want to give me your specific goal, if you'd be open to it, and I'll try my very best.
Okay, my example would be I wanna run 5K.
Yeah. So a very easy one for me, because there's already the Couch to 5K out on the NHS website. So I think there's a lot of content. But in terms of designing your system, I guess depending on where you are on your fitness levels at the moment, creating small nudges to make sure that you are able to increase your cardio abilities and fitness levels by designing routines to increase the amount of exercise that you do, first through even just like putting on your sports shoes. So putting on your sports shoes and maybe doing 10 steps outside of your home a day until you increase those levels through walking, jogging, until you get to a stage where you've achieved your goal. But make sure that you prove it to yourself through small wins. I think it's very easy to set up a goal where you are very quickly discouraged because transformation can be slow.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, if anyone does have any more questions or they want to kind of dig a bit deeper, please feel free to reach out to either myself, my email's on the screen now, or reach out to Sonia as well. I'm sure you can find her on LinkedIn. You've got quite a unique surname there, so I'm sure we'll be able to find you.
Theoretically easy to find, but also very difficult to type. So.
Amazing. So just to kind of wrap up before we go, thank you so much for joining us this evening, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. I hope you really enjoyed the workshop, got something useful out of it, and maybe made some new connections as well. As I said, we've recorded the workshop, so I'll be putting it up on our Uprise Academy YouTube, and I'll send you the link to it. Should be tomorrow, if not Friday. And yeah, I'm just going to now talk for just a couple of minutes about if these are kind of topics that you're interested in, about the virtual programs that we run at Uprise Academy. If you need to shoot off, that's absolutely fine. I won't be offended. But yeah, as I mentioned before, so we exist to get the best of our generation understanding what our purpose is and taking bold action towards it. So what happens to most of us is we get told as we grow up that success looks like graduating university, getting that stable job in a respectable corporate, getting promoted. And the problem is that somewhere along the line, a lot of us reach a point where we think, oh my gosh, is this all there really is? And kind of how did I end up here? So what we do is pretty simple. We have two programs. One is called Find Your Why, which helps you to find your purpose, define a meaningful future, and start building a career towards that over a 4-week program. And our second program is called Zero to Launch, and it's a 2-month accelerator for non-startups. So it's designed to help you launch a purpose-driven company, starting with just an idea. And so you can begin shaping the world around you. So both programs are sort of in the form of online content, live workshops, and coaching in select cohorts. And you can do both separately or you can do them together. I will put the links to both of the courses in the chat now if you want to jump in and have a look. I'll also email them to you after as well. So here is one. Bear with. There we go. So there is the link to Find Your Why. And here is the link to Zero to Launch if you want to have a quick look through them. And yeah, the next steps, if you are interested, are to request an invite on our website so you can delve deeper into the syllabuses and see if you're eligible to apply. I will leave it there for now, but if you have any other questions about anything we've covered, please feel free to email me, reach out on LinkedIn, reach out to Sonia on LinkedIn as well. And that's it. So yeah, thank you very much for joining.
I've just got one last recommendation. So a lot of the material that I covered is part of the Atomic Habits book by James Clear. I don't know how many of you have read it or not read it, but Atomic Habits is a very good place to start.
Awesome. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Awesome. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Hopefully see you again at another workshop soon.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, bye, bye.
Everyone.